no,
Hey Jeff, I think we're having trouble hearing you. You're a little choppy.
does it sound like a robot?
Kind of.
All right, give me 1 second. We're gonna
More
switch.
mic proximity.
Is this any better?
Yes, much better.
All right. We'll go back to the regular computer one. Do you, Roberto or Peter, will you say something? Make sure you can.
Hey, you hear that? Is that loud enough?
All right.
Oh, okay, so the owl is still picking up the one.
Should I need to repeat that again? What I said?
I just keep going.
Just keep going. Okay, so it is, today is, February, 12th, February 12th, 2024. This is the Harbor Plan, update meeting. Phil Smith is the vice chair, filling in for Linda Williams, who has not arrived yet. Let's go through a roll call. Dave Franzuto, Jesse Bell,
Here.
Steve
Here.
Weinbach, Emily Molden,
Here.
Roberto Santa Maria,
Yes, sir, here.
Samantha,
Here.
Peter Brace,
Here.
are there others that
Like Emily Mullen.
I think I got Emily.
I'm here. This is Seth Engelborg.
Oh, yeah, okay, hi Seth. And, okay, I have that. Okay, so Linda Williams is not here yet. We have, Jeff Carlson
Here.
and Jack Wigan,
Here.
Dak Stewart,
Here.
Kristen,
Kristen can't make it today.
okay. Is it Allison Bartels?
That's Alan Bartels.
Alan Bartels, okay, I'm sorry. Tara Riley,
Here.
Kim, I know Kim is here, Kim Starbuck,
Hi.
and Steve McKenna. Is there anyone I overlooked? Okay, for this meeting, the Harbor Plan Update Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference or in person. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided, members of the body, are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, please permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please just do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. I don't believe we have anybody here from the public. Is that correct?
Just,
I'm here.
Okay, for public comment, any members After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak may state their names and be acknowledged and speak through the chair. So was that Matt? Matt, do you want to say anything?
Nope, just listening. Thanks.
Okay. And you are representing what organization, Matt, or just as an individual?
Just here as an individual.
Okay. I apologize. I did not print out a copy of the agenda. I think the first item is approval of the agenda. Does everybody have it in front of them, or should I read it to everybody? We are approving, we want to approve the minutes. We want to discuss issues and recommendations having to do with coordination and administration. And if we get through that, commercial and recreational fishing. And that would be we plan to be finished by 2:30. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll discuss the next date that we will meet. I guess I need to get an approval of this agenda. Jesse, oh, I'm sorry,
So moved.
a second?
Second.
Seconded by Roberto. Jesse,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Roberto,
Aye.
Samantha,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, let's go to the approval of the minutes. Thank you very much, Peter, for doing them. They were excellent, quite detailed, and I think very fairly done. My only nit would be maybe putting page numbers on them, because when we look at them, there's no page numbers.
My computer doesn't do that.
Okay,
I think you can tell that.
okay, you can, I just, you know,
Page.
okay,
I don't think that
okay, I just, you know, that was just a, you know,
that's even more minute than this.
okay. I'm sorry. Do I have a recommendation for accepting the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second? I'll second it. Jesse,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Roberto,
Aye.
Samantha,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Okay. Kim, here you go.
All right, thank you. So we are first going to dive into administration and coordination. Jack has led this section. So Jack is gonna lead us through some issues that have come up for those topics, and then recommendations. And then if we have time, we'll move on to Shannon Hogan is here, and she has been working on the commercial and recreational fishing. So Jack, you want to take it away?
Thanks, Kim. And Shannon, I'll move this as quickly as I can so you can get an opportunity today. All right, everybody, as we've done in the sections before, there are two tables that that you received on this section. I would note that there was no section in the 2009 plan called administration and coordination. The only goal and recommendation and that resembled this section was an objective to ensure that the harbor action plan is implemented. So that will become part of this section now. So if you look at the first table that Kim has put up, there was no goal statement. There was an objective just simply to ensure that the harbor plan implementation strategy is designed and executed in an efficient manner. And I would suggest that we keep that objective or one similar to it. And we'll draft up a suitable goal statement to go along with that. And then there was a recommendation that the selectmen create an implementation committee. And that was done. So we'll leave this, assuming everybody's okay with that, we'll leave this, that we'll draft a new goal. We'll keep that objective or rewrite it slightly, but basically it's going to be the same thrust, that there needs to be a way to implement the plan. The recommendation that we're making is actually on the other table, so we can close this table for now. The second table is just like the other sections. On the left side, the issues that we heard through the public process, including the committee meetings themselves, the various public meetings and the survey and anything else that anybody made a comment on. And then on the right-hand column is not so much recommendations, but suggested ways that these issues could be addressed. And most of these came from the public or from the committee. As we go through this and discuss it, what we'll be doing next is we'll be writing the recommendation that reflects the conversation that we have on each one of these issues. So the purpose here is to raise the issue with you, remind you of the things that people have said about those issues, and then get the committee to give us some guidance on how they would like the issue to be addressed in the plan. So we can start with the first two, and I don't think David is here, right? Which is unfortunate because these first two relate, I think, were recommended by him. First issue listed number 1, remove the Harbor Master Department from the administrative jurisdiction of the police department and return it to an independent entity. From what we know about this, at some point following the adoption of the 2009 plan, the Harbor Master's office went into the police department. We haven't had much of a description of how or why that happened. And I'm not sure how that administrative change could be made, or if the committee even supports such a thing, but that was an issue that was brought up. Any discussion?
I guess I'll say that I know Dave said that he would be late. He was running a training session, so I know Kim just put it in the chat, but that may be
Oh,
something.
okay.
That may be an item to maybe mark as to come back to when the larger board is present.
Excellent. I think that's a good idea. And I think that I'll leave the second one for that too, because that came from Dave as well. And I can speak to it, but he must have had his reason why he was suggesting that. Number 3, increase financial resources to support the Harbor Master Department and for harbor-related purposes, including enforcement. There were a number of ideas about how to do this. They're all listed in bullet points on the right-hand side. Some of the common ones: increase grant writing to access federal and state funding. Somebody mentioned the National League of Cities has a database on funding sources. Somebody asked, can the land bank money be used to support better beach facilities, docks, research, lower fees for locals and increase docking fees for guests, look into Hawaii's visitor impact fee. And actually the next issue down is also a possible solution to that, and that is to raise propose raising the embarkation fee that the Steamship Authority collects. So any thoughts on increasing financial resources? I know obviously anybody who's been involved in the Harbor Master Department would be supportive of this. Any thoughts on that, on how this could be done?
Hey, Jack,
Yes.
I could have sworn I just saw either on Facebook or Instagram at a select board meeting, or it's on an agenda for a select board meeting, the discussion of raising that fee to $2.
Okay.
Yes,
And
it's on the article, no, town meeting.
town meeting article. So is that Dave's article, or is that select board taking?
No, that's
initiative?
the specific to the ferry embarkation fee,
Right,
going from 50 cents to $2.
yeah,
And I believe what it's looking for, they discussed it at their last meeting, is the town of Tisbury on the Vineyard requested a letter of support to put that forward through the state legislature to change that fee. And their general idea was that they needed more information on what the impact of that would look like, how much money would it be, if there are any changes to uses or anything like that, but that's what that currently centered around.
When I was researching this question a little bit before the meeting, I saw that what Jeff is referring to, and there had been in years past a bill submitted to the legislature to do that, to raise it to $2. And I saw something from Falmouth that Falmouth was hoping to raise it to $1, and another town was hoping to raise it to $1.50 or something. So the port towns that this involves have all been thinking about it. The legislation right now says 50 cents, and it's been that way for quite a long time, or probably since the inception of the fee. So this has been around for a few years. $2 is about as high as anybody's suggested it go to.
And so, Jack, does that, the individual towns can't raise their own fee? It has to be a legislative act?
That's right. That the fee is in the bill, in the statute itself.
If I'm not mistaken, though, I thought we could raise it to $1 without state, because the original act said that it could be up to $1, but it was set at 50 locally.
I think that's probably correct.
But then the next thing about the fee is that right now the fee, I believe, according to Dave, is all going into the police department, which is going to the summer special officers program, and not getting back into the Marine area at all. So we need language to somehow make sure that we get all or part of that embarkation fee, wherever it's set, to go back into Marine, to the harbor, issues.
So I looked at the Steamship Authority annual reports for the last 10 years or so, and saw the amount of money that they were collecting and was distributed to Nantucket, and also how that is then allocated within the community. And there is a article every annual town meeting to allocate that money, and the language, the act itself, it describes what it can be spent on, and it's obviously anything that the fact that the ferry arrives and departs from the port, it has an impact. People coming onto the island, that's the impact. So the money can be spent for any impact that's caused by the fact that the ferry services these ports. And so the annual town meeting appropriates some money from that fund every year, and it goes to, and it's a kind of a general statement, goes to the various ways that the ferry impacts the community. And obviously one of those must be the fact that there's a lot of people on the island, and they need to be managed.
Well, I wonder if in order to craft language for the annual meeting, whether that's something that needs to be referred to the finance committee or the select board.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the finance committee is the one that makes the recommendation on the amount. I don't know who puts the article in. I assume it's the selectmen. But the language to allocate that money has been the same since all the years I could go back and find any. The language has always been the same. For the purpose of public safety, protection, emergency services, and any other purpose allowed by applicable law. And I assume that money, the funds go into the police department budget, since that's where the harbor master is, but I don't know.
Sorry, Peter, if the Marine Department breaks off from the police department, can't we assume that the town would then start funding the Marine Department as it needed to be? So what it would need for enforcement, its budget would be its own budget, not part of the police department, like it was before they joined.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're gonna separate it out as a department, it would obviously have its own standalone operating budget.
So we wouldn't need to seek money for them to pay for what they needed to do, because the town would be paying that, right?
Well, even if they don't get separated out into their own department, is it possible to suggest, I mean, this is a plan, suggest language that would take a percentage of that embarkation fee and use it specifically for greater, enforcement by the harbor master in the harbor?
I think you'd want to talk to the harbor master before
Right.
decided to that. That'd be a good conversation to have with Sheila.
We should definitely have Dave here before we go too far down this road.
Yeah, and I think that Dave was one of the people who brought this up, so once he arrives, he might have some insight.
David's talked about this a lot.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, and if you look at the press around the Cape, all of the towns talk about this a lot.
Yeah, I don't think it's an insignificant source of money.
Right. Should we sort of go on? I'm not trying to rush it, but we'll probably come back to it when Dave arrives.
I see Jessie has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jesse.
Thank you. So the reference to land bank, is that by beach facilities, do you mean like bathrooms? I guess I'm just wondering, and better docks, we are building docks now, but they're of course on land bank property. And so just trying to understand that feedback.
I could go back and see exactly where that comment came from, but it may well be just a member of the public was asking the question. And it's sort of worded like that.
Okay.
So you may have just answered the question, Jesse.
Okay.
I mean, I guess in general, I mean, would the land bank ever have money to support public beach facilities? I mean, is that part of your mission or anything?
Right now we've managed to stay away from bathrooms. We have, porta potties at Cisco, and at 40th Pole, actually. But we do not have like brick and mortar bathrooms at any land bank,
Okay.
properties right now.
Okay.
We're a little bit coming into the issue with Cisco. There is a requirement now that there has to be a indoor, like a place for them to, a sink for food vendors to wash their hands, which we're trying to, brainstorm how we do that. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we're and actually we've applied for a variance at the health department to let us do that, just have a standalone sink and not a brick and mortar bathroom.
Okay.
So kind of crossing into this a tiny bit, but not a lot.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I think it came as a question, Jesse, more than anything. So it would be almost as if this plan, we went along and made a recommendation about sources of financial support. If land bank was a potential source, it might end up as one of those implementing agencies. That's all.
I think for us, it has implications for staff management, like, opening bathrooms, closing bathrooms, cleaning bathrooms. So just there's an impact, I guess, to us on all these things. So it would be a new direction, but doesn't mean it's impossible necessarily. But we'd have to, evaluate and think about that, I guess.
Yes, of course. Just because somebody said, look into the Hawaii visitors impact fee. There was a piece of legislation introduced, and I don't know how long ago, that every visitor to Hawaii that was using a public beach or a public park or forest or trail system needed a license to do that, and they would have to pay, I think it was $50 for a license for the period of time that they were going to be on the island to use those public facilities. That's all I know about it. So I looked into it. I don't know if your community is interested in anything like that as a revenue source.
Seems like a lot of money.
I mean, one could imagine why Hawaii would want to do such a thing, but or any other thoughts on sources of revenue to support harbor activities? We'll continue to look at it
Yeah,
as well.
no, I have a point, please.
Sure.
So thank you. Although I think the idea of like a visitor impact fee is interesting, I think the best part about Nantucket and the thing that distinguishes Nantucket from everywhere else in the entire United States is that beaches and waterfront access is free. It's always been like that, and I hope it always stays like that. And I think we should incentivize, or we should fund efforts in other ways other than that. Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Okay, well, we will continue to work on that. Get back to where I was here. Skip over that. Let's see, need number 7. And well, no, we can go to this one. Ensure implementation of the harbor plan. We started by talking about this as it was a recommendation in the 2009 plan as well. So the ways that towns typically do this is the way that Nantucket did it originally. And Nantucket may have actually been one of the first places with a harbor plan to do it that way. And that was to establish, after the plan is adopted, establish an implementation committee that sort of guides implementation. And that committee could be composed of people who are on the various boards and committees that have responsibility for one or another recommendation in the plan. That's would typically be how it would be done. Because as we began talking in the last conversation, this committee doesn't really have any authorities that could be used to implement any of the recommendations in the plan. Most of the recommendations are implemented by a board or a commission or a committee of the community who has those particular responsibilities. And so what the Harbor Plan Implementation Committee would do would be just sort of to ride that process a little bit, to however you'd want to do that, but would meet periodically and review what had been done and what hadn't been done, if a board or committee needed some support or enthusiasm, then the implementation committee would lend that to it, but just sort of riding on top of the process and just making sure that it happened. I was looking at, we were familiar with the implementation committee from the last plan. It was created in 2009 after the plan was adopted, and it lasted until June of 2012. I saw the June 15th meeting agenda, I think, June 15 of 2012, and it was announced it was the last meeting of that committee. I'm not sure why, but it was about 5, I guess. Was it 12? No, when I think about it, whatever. It lasted about 5 years, I think. And if you looked at the agenda, each committee, they would come up and they had a matrix that they were working their way through, which we started with this committee. But basically, that's the exercise. Some people earlier on in this process mentioned that the committee wasn't composed quite right, that it should have people from this committee on it, because you would have a familiarity with what the plan was trying to achieve. And so, and there are probably other ways of doing it too. I mean, community master plans have been around for a long time, and they really haven't ever had a implementation committee per se, other than the planning board remains interested in in implementing the plan. So anybody have any thoughts on what this plan should recommend?
Well, I said at the last meeting, Jack, that once we've got the plan, once we have a draft, then we can go back through it all and identify each action plan or each action item, or look at each action item and then give a note that will be in there for whoever's on the implementation committee to know which entity should implement it.
Okay.
Give our recommendation and maybe even like a 1 or 2 or 3 line explanation of, we think that the Marine Department or the Natural Resources Department or the Land Bank or whoever is ideal for this, and this is why. And so that when the implementation committee gets going, they have that, that's the reference right there. This was our thinking, and and that might
Okay.
save. It doesn't mean that all of us have to be on the implementation committee. Speaking for myself, I won't be secretary of that committee.
Mhm.
So the more help we can give that committee, the better, I think.
Okay. Good.
Because
So when the, yep,
when I
go-
was, one of the 92 or however many recommendations there were was the creation of the Nantucket Blue Pages. And so then I got hired to create that. And so I went to a lot of those meetings to gather data, and the implementation committee helped me write that and put it together. And the committee went through the process of identifying which entity should implement which thing. And they'll probably do that. But if we can tell them, we think you should do this, hopefully they'll, you know, hopefully they'll trust us, you know, so we'll save them some time. They may change what we think, but since we're going through the process, we know what each, and we know which each item should be taken care of by which department or entity.
good, perfect. Any other thoughts?
Can I ask a question just for group discussion?
Sure.
We already have a harbor and shellfish advisory board. Is there any thought of just having them kind of shepherd that along? Instead of forming a whole separate committee that overlaps another existing committee? Not to
There are a couple hands up, Seth.
Yes, thank you. I mean, theoretically, I think that sounds great, but I hate to do anything without asking them first because when they signed up to be part of that committee, they didn't necessarily anticipate this role. So I think we need to get on the agenda for SHAB and ask them if they're willing to do that. And if so, great. But if not, that's not really how government works. We need to have people who are willing to participate. Thank you.
And Emily has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just initially going to say that not knowing how the implementation committee should be comprised, that I definitely support that there should be one, if at all possible. And I certainly don't have a problem with Jeff's suggestion either, but clearly it would be really important to make sure that they fully understand what that responsibility would look like. And I think I would hope that there would be sort of a direct link from this committee to that one as well, as far as some connection and appropriate resources for them, for whoever ultimately does this, plays this role.
I'm gonna jump in front of Samantha. You know, the implementation committee there were some members of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board on that, but there were also at-large members. And there were department heads, and so if it did end up being the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, then you'd have to add in those people. And then the SHAB board would become, I don't know how you do that, be the 7 of us plus other people. And I think you'd want it to be a broader committee, but
I see Sam has her hand up.
Yeah, I strongly echo Peter's sentiments. I think moving it to SHAB would be too restrictive. I think they already have plenty on their plate. And when I think about Peter's earlier point of, you know, assigning in all of these action items, assigning different groups to work with, I think SHAB is absolutely one of those But I just think that there's more people that need to be involved in implementation. And I had wanted to ask this earlier. At the risk of siloing people, would it be, and this would probably be for the implementation committee to decide, but we could give it that guidance. Would it ever make sense to have members of the implementation committee have essentially assigned sections or, action items? Like, I know we all talk about everything here. Like, I really only pipe in on a couple specific things where I feel that my input is valuable. There's other sections that we talk about here that I leave to other professionals because it's not my expertise. Would it ever make sense with implementation to say, okay, the 10 people on implementation, you're responsible for these items, you're responsible for these, and divvy it up so that people, like when you have committee representatives give reports to the select board or whatever, would that ever be direction that we could give? Or is that just for the implementation group to decide? Bueller?
Okay, so, it seemed to me when I sat in all those meetings that everybody had something, everyone had something to say. Everyone had some way to contribute. And it seemed like it worked better. Because then if you break it all off and say, okay, you there at the end of the table, that's all your responsibility. I don't know, it just seems like it's the implementation committee's responsibility. And we even invited, they invited the proposed entity in to, see how they would help us. And so just because you're not an expert in something doesn't mean that you don't have something valuable to say at a meeting. We're all just really talkative today, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, maybe
No,
we've talked.
that makes total sense. I'm just thinking, like, right now we're all ideating, so we're all weighing in. But I think when we move into implementation, like if there's a point, like let's say it is Shab and they're the point person for one of the action items, it would probably make more sense to have one person kind of be the conduit between those. Or like, when NBI came out of the last harbor committee, like there was a point person. I'm imagining that being Seth, hint, hint. But and that could, like, this could just be a non-issue right now. I could be putting the cart before the horse that the implementation committee needs to decide if that's how they want to do business. I just don't know if that would be like helpful direction to give or kind of expectation to give. But if not, no biggie.
Yeah, I think that could make sense. Everybody on the implementation committee is going to have their own specialty. So, I think it's something that we could mention in that recommendation is that, people might divide and conquer to a certain degree. There definitely could be overlap happening, but it might help to do some dividing and conquering based on people's specialties.
And Kimberly and or Jack, can you guys share with us how other towns have approached this?
Yeah, I mean, Kim, you may have more recent experience, but some have created these committees and they've been varying levels of success. And I think it is tricky because because of the nature of the recommendations. Some of them are kind of long-term, require financial resources that, have to be scared up either through town meeting or some other source. So I can imagine that there are periods of time where there's not a lot going on. So I think it's what we've seen. It's a matter of keeping up the enthusiasm over a long period of time. You're meeting sometimes and not much is going on. And so you just have to sort of deal with that. But there's definitely a role for the committee. I think it comes down to how it is, how they choose to do their work. And others have not done anything. They, like many plans, the town is heavily involved in doing it. And so there's just an expectation that the recommendations will somehow get done. But we always felt, and we've said this to all the communities, that the way Nantucket chose to do it struck us as very responsible and and paid off.
Can't just create a document that's gonna sit on the shelf.
Right.
It has to be a living document that's gonna become something, because so many people have so much to say about it.
Right.
We have to put it into action.
It's important, and Peter, you were alluding to this earlier, as the recommendations are drafted, and then we go through the exercise of saying, well, I think this is a planning board member matter, or this is a, conservation commission matter, or whatever, is that those boards and committees are apprised of what it is this plan says that they would be responsible for. And usually how that process works, and as we did it last time, is the recommendations, for example, that were relevant to the Conservation Commission, they were all shipped to the Conservation Commission for consideration during one of their meetings. And they agreed that those recommendations were within their purview, and they basically agreed that those would be worthwhile things for them to be doing. So you do want buy-in in advance of adopting the plan from those entities that are going to be expected to implement them. But we can arrange all that with your help. And that's a big part of the implementation, ensuring that the implementing entities are aware and basically agree with what the recommendation is suggesting. Okay, good on that. Next one, number 7, need educational material for especially new coastal landowners regarding the natural and regulatory environment. This was I thought, a good recommendation. I think it was that some people, newcomers to the island, perhaps buying property, may not be entirely familiar with what the environment they're moving into, or from its natural resource values, or from the regulatory environment. Seems like a useful thing.
Jack, would that include chapter 91?
Sure. Yep, a lot of towns do that. Trying to think if I've ever seen, I think I've seen these, so we could come up with examples of this. It could run anything from very general, we assume and are assured that you appreciate the natural environment that you've moved into, and there are, we're all working together to make sure we don't do anything to harm it, that kind of thing. And just be aware that you expect to build a dock. There are places you can do that and places you can't do that, just so that it's more just to give people some information that might be useful to them as they settle in.
Yeah, and we might want to think about how that overlaps with any other educational materials that, we talked about in the other section. Materials about salt marshes or eelgrass, or just general boating. So we might want to think about if there's like a package that all can be combined into.
It would strikes me as a nice piece that a lot of people, perhaps on this committee, even would be perfect for contributing to. We could certainly do the chapter 91 piece for it, and it'd have to be written in a way that the average person would be able to understand.
Including local bylaws about the Waterways Acts and things like that. I mean, I know a fair amount of real estate agents who go to sell waterfront property in the harbor, and they're telling the people buying it that, sure, you can just get you have property here now, you just get a mooring and you just put a boat out front. I think a lot of them aren't aware of what the town bylaws are already in existence, and what accepted historical practices have been either.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts?
I have a question. I know that there historically has been like a boater's guide. Is this something that would be separate from that, more for like property owners, presumably, rather than intended to replace that?
I think that's a great observation. Yeah, I think the sense of this, whoever brought this up, I think the idea was it had to do with property owners.
That's a
Right.
great idea.
I think, Emily, to your point, I think it makes sense to obviously a little bit shotgun approach it, where I think you're gonna need different materials for different user groups, because those impacts are gonna be different. And the last thing you want to do is to create something that's so big that no one reads it, because they don't want to have to mine out the 3 pieces of information that they're looking for.
No,
So-
we're kind of going through this at Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
And the realtors all have to take a course. I think it's an annual thing. Informing them what they have to legally disclose to the potential buyers, so that they know. And, you know, we're helping, the crack is helping generate, coastal resilience, sea level rise information that we want the realtors to know, so that they can convey that to the buyers, potential buyers. So if they don't go into buying a house along Colbert Ave and not knowing that the water is gonna be in their backyard in 30 years or whatever. So you could, I can't remember the woman's name, Shelley something, can get this information into the course, but we could make this information that would be something that realtors would need to know to give to their property owners. Or something could be, some sort of materials could be produced. I know that a lot of realtors that do rentals, the rental, some sort of package goes to everybody who rents a house or rents through a real estate office. So maybe this material could reach property owners that way.
I think that one way or another, there should definitely be direction for whoever the implementing body is to, I mean, again, I think that there are many entities that could contribute a lot of valuable information to this, but at the end of the day, the question is who's going to coordinate and manage this type of educational material. So whether there's some harbor education subcommittee that has to come together to get it done, I'm not sure who it gets assigned to, but that's something that without a specific assignment, I think could just flounder.
I see Sam has her hand up.
For things like this where, I mean, some of them are very obvious where it'll get assigned to, you know, NRD or the harbor master. For things like this, and I guess it maybe goes back to the blue pages, where does the budget come from? Because I agree with Emily, like this needs a point person. I think this is one of the most important things we could do is educating people, but that takes a person, that takes bandwidth, that takes resources. So how do some of these things that are a little bit more amorphous get paid for?
Yeah, that would become part of the recommendation. Maybe a nonprofit would want to take it on. You know, in other words, this is the beginning of this conversation. So what we're trying to get is a sense of whether you as a committee agree with these issues. And then we'll write it up a little bit more formally and then begin to think about part of our responsibility is to begin to figure out how it gets done. And so maybe some nonprofit might step up, or maybe Jeff would say, you know, we have some sources of grants that this seems suitable for, so we should apply for that or something like that. But we'll advance it as far as we can along, you know, together with you, and then the plan will make some recommendation about how that gets done. You're absolutely right. It's not enough just to say that this would be a good thing to do, but let's have some thoughts on how it would get done.
Thank you, because I'm very aware that this all can't come out of the town budget. Like they have their own
Right.
to-do lists.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think there are a lot of grant sources I could think of that this would be suitable for. All right, number 8 then. This having to do with just people being aware of what places along the coast are available to them. Include a graphic in the plan of waterfront amenities access docks, launches that are required by local and state permit decisions. And then make Chapter 91 licenses publicly available, so people, if they were interested, could see how the property is supposed to make access available to the public. So I think that what this gets at is there's probably maps that the town produces that shows where the public beaches, public parks, public access ways are. But there are, as you all know, access and probably other kinds of waterfront features that are a condition of either a Chapter 91 license or maybe even a local permit that gives people access to a property. And those might not end up on a town's map of public parks and beaches. So that's what this is suggesting, that we include a map set like that in the plan. So there is a visual record of where these access points are.
Just so it doesn't get forgotten, where we have waterfront amenities, access docks, launches, in the et cetera, can we just tag in anchorages?
Sure.
Thank you.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. I remember when Sam raised that previously, and I think it's such an important point. I didn't want it to get forgotten. So thank you, Sam.
These are anchorages where people are allowed to drop a hook. That's what you're talking about? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Jack,
Yeah.
this is Phil. You could put in there that roads and right of way could be helpful there because it does have a lot. One of the things roads and right of way does is keeps track of all the access points for the public. And we have a database of some sort already on that. So in the implementation phase, roads and right of way would be a logical participant.
Excellent suggestion. I think you mentioned last time, Phil, that the right-of-way committee had done this already. So that would be a nice addition.
One of the things roads and right of way does, and they are doing now, is making sure that each one of these right of ways to the water has an appropriate marker or monument. Because some of these have been removed or disappeared or need to be made and new ones put in.
Okay, good. I would note just because it relates to that, is the Chapter 91's licenses always have, when somebody creates a public access way, that it has to be signed. But those are one of those things when we talk about follow up as years go on, whether that's maintained or not is a question. And so the fact that these appear on a map would allow almost anybody to say, oh, there's an access way here and there's no sign, it's supposed to be a sign, just sort of, not that we would ever put it on the public to participate in enforcement, but sometimes you don't know, and somebody would point out to you that there really should be a sign there and there isn't. So it would help just keep things in order. All right, number 9, number of barges at Steamboat Wharf is increasing and tugs hold them to the pier with engines running for hours, causing wake and turbidity issues. We need a regulation to curtail this is needed. Maybe anybody have any thoughts on that?
I had a the person who is the launch driver for the Wauwinet accosted me when I was coming off the refuge last fall doing a hike, and said he was concerned just about that very thing, about those barges, about those tugboats. He says when he goes to pick people up at the White Elephant, he can't even keep his boat. He can't put people on the boat because the weight that's created by the barge that's sending that's by the tugboat pushing against the barge is quite strong and rough, and so we talked about that at the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, and we're concerned about the silting where the sand goes in the harbor. And I believe we got an opinion from somebody at the steam, or maybe it was Rob Ranney, that something like the tugboats have to keep the power going. They have to keep them on for some reason. It's something about the captains don't get paid unless it really is something like that. The captains aren't getting paid unless the engine's on or something.
It's like the flight attendants thing. They
Yeah.
don't get paid until the door closes.
Yeah.
It's very easy to keep the engine on and pull it out of gear. As a
Yeah,
license, I can tell you that.
I agree.
I would
That's-
even 86 Steamboat Wharf. There are barges in a couple different places. I would maybe even more basic, just to say any and all barges and tugs, wherever they may be.
A lot of the reason why tugs don't take their boats out of gear is because it's a lot easier to leave the bow pointed up against the barge in gear than to physically tie it off in a safe manner and then take it out of gear.
And it has to be, Steve, since there's a piece of machinery on there, like usually a skid steer or something, moving the aggregate around so that then the excavators can get the material into the dump truck. So it has to be an element of stability as it is against the wharf, right? And then if you have prefab homes that are coming over, and there are trailers that have to come up and over the edge and down onto the wharf, that connection between the barge and the wharf can't waver, it can't flop around. So,
Well, that's true, but if you look at the steamboat, it docks every time and, they tie it off in a manner that they can get the bridge down and they can get the cars on and off and trucks and everything else. So it's very doable. It's just a matter of convenience, I think. But it does create the silting and turbidity issues that circulate around.
Steve, you seem to know a lot about this. So whose jurisdiction does this fall within, the way these things are operated?
That I don't know. I mean, they're operating in town waters. I don't know if there's state regulations that supersede town regulations on something like that.
Okay.
So
We'll look
I'm
in-
not on that one.
All right, I'll look into it.
But I'm sure that they're, by doing that, the silt is going somewhere. I know, guys that have shallow slips in boats will sometimes tie their boats up to the pilings and put them in gear and do a little dredging that way by just blowing out the slip. So it's all going somewhere.
Yeah, we've heard about that a lot in other places.
yeah, maybe it's Sheila, but I bet the Coast Guard would be a place to check in.
Okay, good. All right, proposed coastal resiliency districts may be within the harbor plan boundary. The town is looking at and brought council into review. The plan could suggest that the town consider betterments for areas where resilience measures are needed and refer to the idea of coastal resource districts. I'm going to guess that this is probably advanced beyond this issue statement as it exists here. Anybody know the status of this?
There is an article, a couple of articles on the warrant concerning this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
this is all kind of pending town meeting approval. If it doesn't
Okay.
approve the town meeting, then we're
Okay.
back to scratch.
Okay. And that's this spring's town meeting?
Yes.
Yep. Good. Right. We'll follow that then. And then I have just a general question, just to conclude this section. There's a whole number of other plans that we've listed on this sheet, and I haven't checked this in a couple of months, so some of these may have changed. But our assumption is that we're going to attempt to be consistent with what these either area plans say or some of these island-wide plans say. And we'll reference them wherever it's appropriate. The coastal resiliency plan has been a big one up to date. And the master plan is kind of being redone now. So I'm not sure but there's a number of area plans that intersect with our area too. So it's just, unless you tell us otherwise, we believe what we'll be trying to do is we'll look at those plans and make sure that what we're talking about is consistent with what those plans are talking about. And if we see an area where there's a conflict, we'll bring that up to the committee. Does that sound right to you about the way we should be going about our work?
I think that's probably a good idea. A lot of these local area plans are still in flux right now because NP and EDC is having some issues with their guidelines. I was involved with the Monomoy area plan, which we considered finished, but have been getting a hard time to get on their agenda to get them to approve it. So
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
was
sure they
Yeah,
not
if
sure
I may,
even approved any of the area plans yet.
if I may speak, please. So,
ahead,
yeah,
Chad.
I'm your NP and EDC representative on this committee. And happy to talk to you more, Jack, but as Steve said, the Monomoy area plan has been submitted but not accepted. There's a town area plan in progress right now. The Matica area plan is in progress right now. The open space and recreation plan, which you have here, was completed in 2023, so we have an update to that. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you about any plans
Okay.
offline if you want.
Good. Yeah, that'd be great, Seth. Appreciate it. All right, that's all for this section. Thank you very much for the input. It's going to be very helpful. Now, if Dave shows up, or maybe we can just wait till the next meeting when Dave is here, and we can go back and cover some of those things that we passed over.
All right, great. Thank you, Jack. And we made it through a section in less than a meeting, so that's impressive. So Shannon is up next. We're going to be talking about commercial and recreational fishing. Shannon, do you want me to take notes as you go, or how do you want, or would you prefer to do that?
I was figuring I could share my screen, but Kim, maybe you could just take notes, if you don't mind.
Sure, I'll take notes on the side.
Okay, that
That'll
would
help
be
too.
great. Thank you. Okay. So I don't know how you guys have been doing it, but do you normally go through the recommendations that were in the last plan before going into the kind of new ones? Okay.
Yes, that's what the committee asked us to do.
Okay, great. So I just pulled the matrix from the last plan, and these were kind of the main objectives and recommendations. So starting at the top, zoom this in a little bit. Whoa. Okay. So the main goal was to sustain and improve the commercial and recreational fisheries of Nantucket by protecting, enhancing a suitable habitat, providing infrastructure for efficient and safe harvesting, appropriate monitoring of catch and aquaculture and research facilities as appropriate to support natural stocks, developing a shellfish management plan, which you guys did, and ensuring that the highest possible water quality is maintained. And so recommendation 1, focusing on preserving, protecting, and enhancing the shellfish populations, was looking at to develop and implement a shellfish management plan. So this has been completed, and I have a future recommendation that we'll look at that involves updating the shellfish management plan. And then recommendation 2 was continue existing propagation efforts, which is complete. And also I wrote in that, the plan should include a recommendation on continuing propagation efforts, especially for the bay scallop fishery. Recommendation 3, continue to seek funding through grants, shellfish license fees, and fines to support fisheries development, management, and research. I think this is something to keep. It's kind of an ongoing recommendation as I see it. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or questions on these first 3 before I move into the next objective.
This is Phil. Tara, you probably, is this where the Great Harbor Grant gets involved? And Samantha, you know about this too, I think. When the Great Harbor, the yacht club was approved, there was a requirement for, I don't know how many years.
10 years.
For contributing to the work you guys do. Is that correct?
35,000 a year, and it's the grant that is expired.
Has it expired now?
Yeah.
That's been done for a few years.
Yeah, I think 2021 might have been the last year of that formal grant program.
I heard that there was something that was going to pick up again. Is that correct?
I mean, it's kind of changed forms over the past couple of years. You know, I don't know if you want to describe it, Jeff, but it was like a formal review committee from people even outside of the Great Harbor Yacht Club, and now it's kind of sitting with the Great Harbor Yacht Club as the formal review committee for a lot of funding.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've obviously established their own foundation to do that. But there's a number of other ones running around. I mean, I think, I don't want to steal her thunder at all because she's on the call, but like the Land and Water Council have the water fund that people can contribute and then you can apply into. The Biodiversity Initiative has their thing of small grants for research that you can certainly apply into for things as a researcher. So there's lots of opportunities out there. It's not just one. Would it be helpful if everything got vetted through one place? Probably, but how you carve all that up, I think would be really interesting.
Or at least oversee, be aware of what's going on.
Can I go back to the recommendation, one for the update on the shellfish management plan? I think last time when we did it, we had a mechanism for an implementation committee. However, one was never developed, because we did not receive people, like enough applications to form a board for an implementation committee. And so as a result, our natural resources department ended up taking on the charge of doing that, and that I feel like created some conflicts and, you know, kind of designating which groups were supposed to be handling different action items. And so I think like if there is something in there that says we need to update the plan, I think it should also say that we need to include a mechanism to make sure that there is an implementation process with that.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to objective 2, which is maintain and improve the infrastructure necessary to support both shell fishing and fin fishing. Recommendation 1, improve and expand upon existing waterfront access points and seek new access for fisheries uses through easements, Chapter 91 license requirements, land purchases, recovery of historical points of access not recorded by the town or other means. And so this was listed as 50% in the matrix. And then recommendation 2, expand the availability of adequate and affordable dock and mooring spaces to support commercial and recreational fisheries by including special conditions in Chapter 91 licenses. And then increase and improve existing shoreside infrastructure, including boat repair facilities and marine supply shops to support commercial and recreational fishing opportunities. Investigate additional dinghy and storage at high use areas. So I think there's probably a lot of this objective probably fits into what was talked about at the last meeting about the commercial waterfront and kind of the need, or the public sees the need for commercial fishing here. So I'll leave this up if there's any comments or anything before I move into the issues and recommendations that I developed for the new plan.
There's one thing that, I mean, it's not on the water, and some of you might be familiar with this, but Community Sailing has worked out a deal with the town for this area called Shadbush out, I guess, off of Industrial Road.
Yep.
It's beyond the VFW. And in addition to that of property being available to Community Sailing to take care of boats, Community Sailing is also authorized to rent at very attractive rates to local boat builders and people who were helping take care of boats. It's a great resource, and I don't know, I guess maybe the committee just ought to be aware that that exists, and it's a tremendous thing, because there are a couple of individuals who have little small boat repair facilities or maintenance facilities that are able to keep the boats and work them on them out there. Yeah, I would think that we would want to support this thing ongoing because it continues to serve the waterfront. Steve, are you aware of that at all?
I wasn't aware that they were opening up space to other, you're saying commercial entities, not just individuals that want to store a boat.
That's right, yeah. I mean, it's operation, it's been in operation for a few years now.
I knew that they were out there. I didn't know that they had space available for commercial people to come in.
Well, I mean, I think it may be that the space is kind of taken up by now, but I mean, the intent is to try to help local people who wouldn't have property otherwise to take care of boats. I mean, this is commercial in that, helping individual people who have sailboats that would like to hire some local facility or little team of workers to take care of their boats and store them and that sort of thing. I just mentioned that because it's sort of under the umbrella of community sailing.
No, the town has a long-term lease with community sailing out there.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the Marine Department, it's on Shabush Road. It's where
Right.
They come from. So the Marine Department has a building that's been under construction to kind of do a similar purpose for maintaining their boats out there as well.
We don't know when it's gonna be done.
Been under construction for quite some time.
I just mentioned that because it's not, it's not on the waterfront. And one of the reasons it's not on the waterfront is because that type of property would be so expensive.
Well, recommendation 3, it says complete, and you're mentioning marine supply shops to support commercial and recreational fishing communities. I'd say that's up in the air, given what's going on with the, tidal creeks. Former Colac building. There should definitely be some mention in there about that and how we want to try and get something in there, or how we would go about that.
I know, not to editorialize too much. I don't think that's a goal you can ever complete.
Mhm.
Because shouldn't we always be looking to improve shoreside infrastructure?
Just say ongoing then.
I mean, to me, that's a forever goal.
The goal is running away from us.
Yeah, we're definitely behind on that too.
Okay, all right, so I'm gonna move into issues and recommendations for the new plan identified through the public meetings, also committee meetings, and then through the interviews with municipal staff. And so the first one is talking about how there's no, proper dock space for commercial fishers to load and unload gear and daily catch, and how there was, there's a need for a commercial pier. And I know, as I said before, that this was talked about at the last meeting, so I don't know if you really want to dive into it again, but I'm keeping it here as a placeholder because that was something that was identified by a lot of people. And so I think at the last meeting, we kind of landed on potentially a feasibility study, and it's going to be developed. That recommendation will be developed a little bit more, but leaving it in here because it was something that came up a lot. And then another aspect that came up from some of the public comments was, how to get more commercial fishing activity in the marina, maybe like a dockside market, trying to find a means of selling local catch at the dock. So maybe it's, this kind of ties into that temporary access or temporary way to kind of, create more activity for commercial fishing at a dock.
When it says the marina, are we talking about the boat basin?
That's a good question. This was just a specific public comment. So I don't know if they were saying just somewhere in town or specifically the boat basin.
Because someone could read that, someone who has Petrol Landing on their mind, could read that and go, oh, well, let's do that at Petrol Landing. So to definitely specify where that marina is, or whatever that space on the waterfront is, maybe they meant the town pier.
Yeah, I kind of think they did mean the town pier.
If I might, some of that language is kind of misleading. It says there's currently no proper dock space, e.g. commercial pier wharf for commercial fisheries to load and unload gear and daily catch. Well, that's not really true because the end of the town pier is for that. And Dan Pronk was tying up and selling fish directly off the end of the town pier. So, I mean, there probably is need for more accessibility, but there already is some capacity at this point. Maybe they just don't like it because they have to go all the way to the end of the pier with carts to unload, and it's inconvenient, but there is some. And it would be nice to have more if someone can come up with an area.
All right, so I'm going to move on to the next one. Just talking about the bay scallop fishery, how it's, significant to the island's economy and culture, but obviously there's been some issues with workforce development and kind of the graying of the fleet. And so the thought is, how do you get more, younger generations into the bay scallop fishery, and maybe how do you retain the people who are in the fishery currently? Seth, I see your hand up there.
All right. So Nantucket High School has there's a state program called the Innovative Pathways Program. And Nantucket High School has adopted 2 of these pathways. One of them is maritime. So we actually have a specific program at Nantucket High School to support maritime industry. And I think there's obviously a opportunity to engage with that. Not my organization, but I know Egan Maritime is already engaging with that Innovative Pathways program for maritime education, sort of like on the boat operations side. But I think there's obviously a possibility for shell fishing and aquaculture and environmental or marine scientist jobs to be incorporated into that. So we should put that on the list as a point of contact for basically new shellfishers.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear that there's already kind of something in place. And it sounds like it's successful. So maybe one of the recommendations I had included was to kind of create an advisory committee to kind of figure out what type of program or what type of topics or content or what you would include in a maritime program that would be focused on shellfishing. So to figure out what that would look like, because I think for the other industries, when you're talking about maybe like for marinas or that kind of trades work, there's already kind of vocation or programs that have frameworks. So trying to think about what that would look like for aquaculture and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think there's already staff at the school and kind of like an advisory committee for that. But a lot of the problems is like a lot of things in Nantucket education happen in silos and people don't know that they exist. So it's more about like getting the right people together to say like, here's the opportunities, and actually having like a consistent commitment with the staff and with the students so that there's a knowledge that the program is actually viable.
And somewhere in there, you should mention Seth, or some of the information that should be disseminated. Is the town's apprentice program. So if you're a new shellfisher, if you're going to be a new commercial bay scalloper, you need to do 40 fishing days with an experienced scalloper before you can go and scallop on your own. So that should be prominent. People should know that. That should be put out there.
And I also just noted that there's also the Young Fishermen's Development Grant Program, which I'm sure you know about, that funds essentially, you know, projects and research into these kind of programs. So if you're looking potentially for additional funding or how to support this, if you don't have the capacity for that, they do support programs like that. Right. And then this third issue basically goes into the shellfish closure areas in relation to kind of the new FDA's shellfish annotation program, the revision in 2019. So just addressing how do you kind of prevent potential shellfish closures, or how do you work around shellfish closures in relation to your mooring field? So some of the recommendations were to create a buffer zone around open shellfish areas so they are not seasonally closed due to mooring placement. Maybe move rental moorings and liveaboards to away from open shellfish areas. Cluster mooring fields in areas away from shellfish areas. Prohibit overnight in certain areas or certain times of the year. So you just completely get rid of that potential for water quality issues. And then adding additional water quality sites near shellfish beds.
Any comments on that, or are we all getting a little tired?
I feel like I provided this comments.
Yes.
That list right there, so I think it looks great.
We're coming up on 2:30, Kim.
Okay.
I don't know how much, Shannon, how much more do we have on this?
We have probably about 6 or so more. So we could, I don't know if we want to stop there and save it, but we do have more
I'm
than
thinking
half.
maybe, I think
Yeah.
we might be all collectively running out of gas. Maybe would this be a good time to just draw a line and say, well, continue at our next meeting? I mean, I think we've made tremendous progress. We finished up another one and we're almost finishing up this one. But to give it the attention that it deserves, I think we carry it on to our next meeting. Is that okay?
I think that's a great idea. And want to take the next minute or two just to figure out when we want to meet again. Next Monday is President's Day. I don't know if we want to try. Normally we don't do the last Monday of the month, February 26th. But if we want to keep our momentum going, do we want to put another meeting on the calendar for the 26th?
I think unless there is strong disagreement, can we do that the 26th?
Is that February 26th?
That's when the school vacation is, right?
Yeah.
So probably
I won't be
bad,
here
bad
that
for a
day.
lot of people.
Slowest time of the year.
Get ready.
So the next one is the 4th, right?
Yeah, so we can wait until March 4th if you guys want to. I'm not sure if there's any point in trying to squeeze something in at a different time before that, or if we want to just wait until then.
I'll be away from the 14th to the 24th, so.
Okay, we can shoot for March 4th if that works for everyone.
I don't have to.
That's the last thing I can do. Says I will have to, it's the week after.
Would we be looking at the 18th after that then? 4th and the 18th for March?
Yes, that good?
So anytime after the 14th, I'm done.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. Baby's due on the 14th, so I'll be out.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just had to step out for 1 second. So what did we say? The next meeting is when?
The 4th, I think, is when works best for everyone.
Okay, so you'll send around one of those notices, invites.
Yep. Yep,
Okay.
so March 4th and then March 18th, we'll plan on those two. And in the meantime, just to keep momentum going on our end, we're working on background sections and are going to send those over to the town sometime, hopefully in the next few weeks, just to kind of make sure we're still moving the ball forward. But I think we're making good progress here.
Kimberly, how many more sections do we have to complete after this, commercial and recreational fishing? We finish that up, and then how many more do we have?
3 or 4?
There's water quality.
Water quality.
Harbor,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
water quality, harbor operations, that includes dredging and navigation.
Public
and then-
access.
Public access, coastal resiliency.
I think that might be it.
So I think those
Okay,
are
so we're making good progress, I think.
definitely.
Okay, anything else? Shannon or Kim? Or, okay, I guess, can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Roberto, I will second it. All in favor, Jesse? Oh, Jesse stepped out, I'm sorry. Steve? Steve?
He said that.
Oh, he's muted.
Sorry.
You voted? Aye, okay. Emily,
Aye.
Roberto,
Yes.
Samantha,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Good stuff.
See you on
Thanks.
March
Have a good
4th.
day.
Thank you.
And